Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to talk about the story behind the set of Ikoria. So let us dive right in. It all starts with Luca, who will one day become a planeswalker, but at this point is still just a regular soldier, okay? Actually, technically he's not a regular soldier. He is a soldier of rank in the city of Drannith. Now, the Drannith is basically a gigantic fortified walled city that has done a very good job of keeping monster attacks at bay. It's a very militarized society under the rule of General Kudro. So, Luca is a ranking officer, and the story starts with him and troops under his command dealing with a nightmare. And it gives you a glimpse into some of the ways that these individuals handle monsters. So they know that particular scents will draw in different kinds of beasts. Nightmares are attracted to the scent of onions and raw, like rotting flesh, right? So we start out kind of getting a view into the world and the way that they handle things. Luca is part of a squad that is keeping Drannith safe, wiping out monsters. Now, due to a quirk of fate, all of that will be taken away from him. What happens is he is back in the city of Drannith, right? He is hanging out with his girlfriend, who happens to be the general's daughter. That's an important part of the story that we'll cover more as we go along. So anyways, it turns out that there has been an infiltration in the city. Some sort of monster has made it in. People have been sent out to investigate, but they haven't survived. So Luca is dispatched with some of his troops out to the location to figure out what's going on. They are looking for a flying cat that has somehow managed to invade the city and is hanging out in a ramshackle part of town. So Luca shows up with his squad, and his squad ends up getting wiped out by this cat. This cat just tears them apart. And I'll say this for the story. They don't pull any punches in terms of taking people's lives out. So there's a bunch of bodies strewn around, and the cat comes smashing out of the wall of this cheap, flimsy shed. At that exact moment, there is an arc of green energy that connects the cat and Luca. He's not sure what's going on. The cat kind of hesitates. All of a sudden, Luca gets knocked out. He gets hit by something. He gets knocked out. He's not 100% sure what happens, but what happened, but he doesn't know why he's alive. He's very confused as to why he's still alive, as this giant beast should have had a very easy time taking him out, right? So now that's just the beginning of Luca's problems, because what happens next is he awakens in the infirmary inside the military structure, right? General Kudro wants to have words with him. He wants to know exactly what has happened, and basically they determine underneath these reports that are going on of people, because other people were able to report, hey, there was this green arcing kind of energy that happened between you and the beast. Now, unbeknown to most of the population, they keep this information hidden in Drannith, is that this new sort of occurrence called bonding is where beasts and mankind are melding together mentally. Now, this is a new thing, and the general views it as a disease. So the general basically views anybody who's connected to an animal in this fashion as essentially a would-be traitor, a threat to his rule. He cares, but more importantly, more than a threat to his rule, a threat to the city under his charge. Because make no mistake, the general is very interested in protecting the population. However, that means he has to make very difficult choices, and he basically decides that he is going to, at the very least, have Luca arrested, if not outright executed, to avoid the threat that this possibility poses. So as I mentioned previously, the leader's daughter is actually his boyfriend. They're very much, or girlfriend, I should say. They're very much in love. And so she rushes off and, using secret tunnels and whatever, manages to get to Luca before the official troops do to take him into custody. And she's like, you got to get out of here. You've got to get out of here. But basically, by the time they're done talking, there's no way to easily escape. Word has kind of been spread. So they have to run a pseudo scam where they essentially pretend that Luca has her at knife point. And you know, that sort of like, back back away or she gets it sort of scenario. So Luca uses that to escape out of the compound of the general and then continues onwards trying to escape from the city. Now, he gets into a scenario where he's not really able to handle what's going on. He tries to go out through the gates, but the word has gotten to the gate saying, yo, we've got a traitor in the Legion. If you see him, snag him. Don't let anybody by without papers. So he is basically under this sort of like, we're going to catch you scenario, trying to leave. You have the troops going, look, bro, you're not going anywhere. You've got to stay here. And at that point, that's when Vivian shows up. And her beasts just start like, one of her spectral beasts just start knocking the soldiers around. And this allows Luca to avoid that situation, starts talking with Vivian, because Vivian is actually there to find Luca. If you're wondering why Vivian would bother to help him, it's because she sensed the phenomena that was happening between Luca and the flying cat and wanted to study its source more and was on her way to the city to find the source of where this happened when the source actually happened to wander up to her. So Vivian ends up becoming Luca's traveling companion. They travel together. Vivian has a sub-role in this sort of scenario. She's not the main character. She is one of the main-ish characters, but this story is really the tale of Luca. So at this point, Luca has managed to escape. They're able to bluff their way out in the outer rings because the city is set up in different rings of defense. And the more you get out there, the more you're out in country lands. So Luca was actually able to bluff his way in with his rank that's on his armor, demand new gear, and slip on by so they're able to get out further into the wilds. Now, the general isn't willing to let this whole scenario lie, right? He views the Luca and Cat scenario as a threat to the safety and also his leadership. Anything that infringes on his leadership, he thinks will instill panic. So as a result, he is going to have Luca brought back to the city. And he is sending his daughter out as part of the team to bring it back. Basically, so that nobody would think that his daughter was involved with the whole scenario, he's sending her out as well, so she will be part of the recapturing squad. She goes out with a group of hunters. She finds the concept distasteful and doesn't realize that underneath there are some ugly, gritty realities that her father has to accept to rule over Drannith effectively. And one of those is the covert use of these hunter beasts. Not beasts, I shouldn't say beasts. They're men that are more bestial, right? They're humans that are more bestial, men and women, who form a more like tribal sort of group. So they don't have the rigid militaristic sort of scenario. They insult each other, bicker over things, fight each other. They're a bunch of rogues and vagabonds, that sort of thing. So Jarina, that's the name of the the general's daughter. She joins up with these vagabonds, these derelicts who are quite good at hunting beasts. You actually see them go out and take some crazy beasts down. There's a scenario where at one point, Luca and Vivian end up being attacked by a wild beast. Luca injures the beast. Vivian's willing to fight against the beast as long as the beast is attacking Luca and Vivian. However, once it tries to leave because it's been pretty decently injured, one of its legs has been hacked up, Vivian refuses to fight it anymore, and Luca chooses not to give chase, and the beast leaves. But this hunter group that is chasing after them encounters the beast later, and it helps to illustrate the group's viciousness because they descend upon this weakened beast, and instead of ending it right away, they're just beating on it, taking out their frustrations, and in a way torturing it as well. So the daughter of the general, Jarina, is like, okay, look, just end the beast. We need to get going. What are you doing? Like there's conflict with this group that is chasing Luca and Vivian. Now, where are Luca and Vivian headed? They're trying to find the source of what has happened with this cat. Because Luca is bonded with the cat, he can feel that underneath, the cat did not want to invade the city of Drannith. It was under a compulsion. Basically, there was a flaring of some reddish-orange light and a voice in the head of the beast saying, destroy all humans, lay their cities to waste, destroy all the humans. So this kind of flare, this pulse of energy that overtook the cat, he was able to trace the idea of where it was coming back back to what turns out to be the Ozolith. All right, so Luca and Vivian are headed on their way to the Ozolith to find out like what's going on. Who's compelling these animals? Why are they being compelled? What's going on in that regard? And so the story continues with Jarina and the marauders that are trying to catch up with them, taking crazy airships and airships, right? That's what they have. They have these flying airships that are powered. They're essentially like a hot air balloon town, which was one of the coolest parts of the story, for real. They basically connect all these hot balloons together to create a gigantic floating town. But to maneuver through it, you actually have to pass through all these different people's like hot balloon carriages, and that's their home. So it's like, imagine if everywhere you were going, you had to walk through your neighbors' houses and stuff. And apparently it's a place where you can get all kinds of forbidden and illicit items in that world too. They don't, like, Dranith has rules where you can't buy and sell, trade in monster parts, but no such rules apply to the individuals of the sky. They're a little more roguish, they'll hire themselves out to whoever. They have a kind of traveling service that they offer, and there's different levels of individuals who live in that sort of sky tenement, right? And there's one who has a really awesome fast ship and some nice tech that helps you track people down, obviously magical tech. So the hunters actually go ahead and hire this individual to take them out to the Ozolith, where they know that Luca and Vivian are headed. So the Ozolith has a bunch of nightmare beasts that are enslaved to it already. Whatever the mind is behind the Ozolith that's controlling it, it is controlling these nightmare beasts. So we end up with this gigantic, crazy scenario where on the journey, you've picked up things like there's Bonders that have been picked up as well by Jarina. So you end up with the Marauders, Bonders, Jarina, Luca, Vivian, and all these nightmare beasts, all outside of the Ozolith. This is like this grand melee going on where a bunch of people get wiped out. And I do like that about this book in terms of like, not every named character is going to make it through this scenario alive. Now, you end up with the scenario where Luca is trying to bond with the Ozolith. He goes up to it and he ends up climbing up to the biggest crystal. And in the process, he cuts open his hand. So when he gets there, he slaps his bloodied hand down onto the Ozolith, and that creates a link, essentially, that pulls him into the Ozolith. Inside the Ozolith, he is spoken to by the same voice that spoke to the cat, saying, hey, rend and destroy, all humans must die. And remember, up until this point, Luca has not fully accepted the cat beast. They never became friends. They shared an emotional bond, but they never really linked because Luca wasn't able to accept the fact that the cat was responsible for the destruction of all of the soldiers with him. But yet he's still trying to figure out what's going on with the Ozolith. So the voice in the Ozolith basically offers power to Luca. Now, one of the nitpicks I have about this story, for real, is that we never get to find out who the voice in the Ozolith is or what they wanted. That part is literally waved away and is never resolved in the story, and that is pretty frustrating. But regardless, the outcome is that the Ozolith grants Luca the power to dominate monsters. So he takes control of all of these nightmare beasts that are around the crystal, and he finds that through the crystal, he can exert his will further and further and take over all of these different monsters. And all he's wanted since the beginning is to just go home. There were multiple times where he was trying to come up with a way to go back home. And so his newest plan is, look, if I subjugate all of these monsters and I take them with me, right? Then I can go back to Dranith and present them to the general and say, look, what would be better to defend the town than if we have this entire scenario of all these beasts? All these beasts, right? It's kind of sad. When you think about how it was for Luca, it's kind of sad because he ends up in a scenario where all he really wants to do is go home. But home is forever denied to him. And actually, I just realized that I made a slight mistake. I do have to give a point of clarification here, guys, just to let you know. I was so dissatisfied with the book that I actually refunded it. So I can't actually go back for the details to get 100% accurate, like going through it stage by stage. So I'm going from memory. So I did forget to mention that at one point, Jarenia actually ends up back home. So she ends up being taken back home, and the cat warrior is the one that takes her there. Basically, all the havoc that's going on with the crystal at this point, I guess I didn't really miss it. I just didn't say it in the right order. Anyhow, Jarenia ends up being saved from the whole scenario that's going on with all these beasts and all this fighting by Lucas Cat. Lucas Cat takes Jarenia, flies her all the way back to Draneth, right? And then basically she begs the cat, like, please don't get too close, don't do whatever. The cat doesn't listen, drops her off. The cat ends up getting taken prisoner. And then Jarenia tries to convince her father, the general, don't do anything to this cat. It actually saved my life. It's friendly. And he said, I'm not going to do anything to the cat. You are. You're going to execute the cat because there's all kinds of whispers and suspicion about you roaming through the troops here. And basically, we can't have that. So you're going to execute the cat. And Jarenia refuses to do that. So the general ends up executing the cat himself. Now, for me, this was a disconnect in the story simply because when I had seen the magic cards with the artwork, they depicted Luca as a full-on bonder with the cat when he was already a planeswalker. But in the story, the cat gets executed, doesn't come back to life, and Luca never fully becomes a bonder. So I found that that part of the story was confusing to me. Moving onwards, Luca brings this gigantic army of beasts to basically try and join with Draneth, but then gets rejected. The general's like, no, forget it, man. We're not accepting you. Get out of here. So then instead he goes, okay, the only way I'm going to get to go home is if I destroy like what's here and take over myself. So that's when Luca turns all the beasts onto Draneth and says, level it, destroy it. And Vivian is there trying to help save against these beasts. Now, in the trailer, there's a crystal that lights up and reanimates beasts. None of that happens in the story, so I don't know what happens. Basically, Luca ends up being defeated. At the moment of his great defeat, he actually ends up planeswalking away. And the story just kind of abruptly ends there with the like end credits rolling, showing that the bonders that participated in the battle are now accepted in the city. And part of that is because the general is no longer alive, right? So the general's been wiped out and Jarenia has taken over. So now bonders are allowed into the city. And then we get a brief glimpse of Luca on a new plane of existence where he kind of falls into the muck of a swamp. These beasts come running up to him and he tries to exert the control that he gained from the Ozolith and finds that a flicker of it still remains. So two of the beasts run off in terror, but one of the beasts bow down to him, and he essentially starts cackling like a madman and plotting his revenge. And that's how the story ends. So for me, I gotta say, the Ikoria story was all right. I did genuinely refund the novel though, because it's only 150 pages, and it felt like it went through a bunch of rewrites and was essentially a ripoff. It didn't feel like it was worth it. So, I mean, if I'm missing a few details from the story, friends, sorry, normally when I do a story recounting, I have details to pull from, but because I was so disgusted with what they did with this product, I was like, nah, son, I'm getting my money back. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If there's anything you think that I left out and you've read the story, let me know about that in the comments below as well. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Hope you have yourselves wonderful days. Big shout out to my patrons and channel members for supporting my channel here. I released a fun new video on my other channel, so I will link that down in the comments. Go ahead and check it out, and I will see you all soon.